A happy Monday. Welcome into the BetMGM Network. This is Send It In, presented by BetMGM. I'm your host, PJ Glasser. Awesome news for the network to be a part of the BetMGM Network now. As always, we're going to be with you guys 1 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time every Monday through Friday. Make sure you check us out, though, on our new social channels on X, at BetMGM Network, Instagram at BetMGM Network. Check us out on TikTok at BetMGM Network _, YouTube at the BetMGM Network, and check us out on Twitch at the BetMGM Network as well. Excited to rebrand. Going to be awesome. Shane Jackson going to join us here in moments. BetMGM writer. Looking forward to having him on each and every week. Going to get his thoughts on a bunch of different things here coming up. Also going to talk college basketball. Had a crazy weekend. Bunch of upsets. Going to look at the top 10 teams, some college basketball futures. Of course, it is Super Bowl week. We're going to break down some of the Kansas City Chiefs props that we like for the big game, and also going to dive into that Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis blockbuster. Look at some Lakers and Mavericks futures here over the next 30 minutes. As always, any comments, any thoughts that you guys have for us, make sure you go to Twitch at the BetMGM Network, or you can go to X at BetMGM Network, go to YouTube at the BetMGM Network as well. Send in any questions, any comments that you guys have for us. Let us know what's on your mind. And if you miss any part of the show over the next 30 minutes, we got you covered with the Send It In podcast, available wherever you get your podcast. Glasses in session. Let's get rolling here on a Monday. We go to the Glasser guest line, check in with Shane Jackson, who joins us, BetMGM writer. Make sure you guys give him a follow on X at SJacksonMGM. Shane, great to have you on the show, man. And what a debut, right? I mean, the NBA gave us a blockbuster over the weekend with Luka Doncic going to the Lakers, Anthony Davis going to Dallas. I mean, just your reaction to that trade when you saw it.
Yeah, I was worried we weren't going to have anything to talk about, but then I forgot the NBA can change in a moment's notice. No, it was honestly disbelief. I think I woke up at 5:30 in the morning and didn't fully realize what was happening. I thought I was still dreaming, and that this didn't really happen. So no, a lot of crazy moves over the weekend, but that was the biggest one. And on a betting perspective, I just thought immediately I'm going to be targeting Lakers overs when their totals when Luka returns to the court. I think they were about mid 220s when without AD the last couple of games, and it's hard to envision them getting a whole lot of stops with the roster now, especially if they don't make any more moves. Alternatively, I think Mavs unders, it could be a move as well. They were kind of mid 230s, but trading for AD should boost that defense.
I love it, Shane. You're just like me, right? You see a big trade like that, it settles in, and then you start thinking from a betting perspective what to do with these teams. I like the look with Lakers over, Dallas unders. What about long term? Like if you're looking in the futures market, right? Because obviously LA's price took a dip with Luka and LeBron teaming up. Dallas, they're going to be a really solid defensive team, but now they lose one of the best offensive players in the NBA in Luka. So, like win total wise to win the West, anything that you would do with either of these teams? Do you like them long term? Would you fade any of them?
Eventually I will like the Lakers, I think, but going from 40 to 1 to win the title to 14 to 1 is just a tough ask, especially I think they dropped to 21 right away. I mean, this is kind of what the Bucks do with these moves. They know people want to bet that, and they're going to short them a little bit. But I expect these odds to kind of settle here in the coming weeks. Luka won't be on the floor right away, and maybe you see the Lakers stumble a little bit. They got the Clippers on Tuesday night, and so maybe you'll see a few more losses, and maybe those odds will take a dip and get back into the 20 range. And then I might be more interested. Again, they are a flawed roster, and so you're kind of just buying the extreme outcome in that scenario. But I don't mind it, especially when you got Luka and LeBron on the same team. For the Mavs, I'm not as interested on their extreme outcomes. I think they're more of a solid team, but I still now think they're just kind of a worse version of what the Lakers just were with Anthony Davis. So I'm less interested from that standpoint. One future I did place right away, and I'm assuming this is a safe place and I can talk about it, is Anthony Davis 125 to 1 to win Defensive Player of the Year. I know Victor Wembanyama is going to win this award. His odds suggest so. He has an implied probability of 93%. But let's pretend we live in that 7% world. Anthony Davis is someone who finished third in a Defensive Player of the Year voting last year. Historically, this has not gone to a player like Wemby. It has to go to a player on the team with the best defense, either first or second in defensive rating. And Wemby would be the youngest player to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think there's only been 4 23-year-olds, and he's 21. And so the Spurs ranked 19th in defensive rating. He's really young. I could see an argument that Anthony Davis a player who is considered maybe the best defensive player in the league who hasn't won this award, maybe getting some respect if the Mavs level up into that elite defense in the coming months. So I think Jaren Jackson Jr. a couple of years ago won a Defensive Player of the Award similarly. That first month, the Grizzlies were 20th in defensive rating, and then Jaren Jackson Jr. came in and they were 3rd in defensive rating, and he got all the credit. I could see a similar outcome for Anthony Davis. He has a less than 1% chance based off the odds. I just think it's a few more percent than that.
All right, I like that. Good look there on AD to win Defensive Player of the Year. We also had another trade last night, Shane, with De'Aaron Fox going to the San Antonio Spurs, Zach LaVine to the Kings, part of a 3-team deal. What did you make of that trade, and what do you think the Spurs are going to look like with De'Aaron Fox and Wemby? Do you think that they potentially could get themselves into that play-in game in the Western Conference?
Yeah, similarly to earlier, I think the odds reflect that. The Spurs went from plus 750 to make the playoffs to plus 350. So they're buying like the Spurs have a chance to make the playoffs. And I think they're definitely in that play-in tournament picture. I wouldn't bet on it right away. Again, I think it's the Western Conference. One bad week, and you can slide down the standings, and your odds could get better. So I'd rather wait for that opportunity. But again, my immediate thought went to, okay, how am I going to bet this from a prop perspective? I could see Stephon Castle having kind of a reduced role with this kind of new roster, especially from a shooting perspective. So I might target some of his unders on points and 3-point prop as well. So I think that's the angle I would go to right away, and then maybe look at futures down the road.
Is there a team that you think is going to make a move before Thursday's deadline, or maybe a team that you think needs to make a move, especially after what the Lakers and the Mavs did and even what San Antonio did, getting De'Aaron Fox?
Yeah, easy to envision quite a few teams to make a move. As the team I want to make a move, I think the Houston Rockets make a lot of sense. They're doing really well. I think they made a level up that I wasn't necessarily expecting, going from a team that wasn't in the play-in tournament picture to the number 2 seed in the West. And it could be easy to look at the Thunder, who did a similar jump last year, and say, we'll just go and get our licks in the playoffs and then try to see what we can do better into the next year. The problem is, the Spurs are clearly coming with Wembanyama. The Thunder are already here and they're not going anywhere. And now you got to worry about the Luka Lakers in the years to come. So I don't think you should take for granted the year that you'll have a few years left of contention. I think they have enough pieces and they need another shot creator on the offense to help really boost this team, which has an elite defense. So I'd be interested in maybe moving one of their young guys and getting better on the offensive end. So if I were the Rockets, I'd be aggressive. I don't know if they will, but that would be the one move that I'd make.
Very good. Shane, definitely want your thoughts on the big game down in New Orleans. Before we get to that, any plays that you like tonight in the NBA?
Yeah, similar from another trade reaction. I immediately went to Malik Monk over 6.5 assists. I think it's now bumped up a little bit to 7.5, but I'm interested still in the alternate market. I think the Sacramento Kings are going to have more of a lead guard by committee approach without De'Aaron Fox. But Malik Monk is someone who's had 7+ assists in 6 straight games, even with Fox. I could see him having more assist opportunities without him as well. So I definitely like that over 6.5, and I would consider the alternate angle if it moves up too much further. I think, over 7.5, over 8.5, maybe a double-double flyer. I think that's the way to go. Take advantage of this unknown immediately after the trade reaction, and then the markets will eventually correct itself after a couple games.
All right, I like it. Yeah, props are certainly going to be interesting with all these trades. There might be some good spots to take advantage of some of these markets. And then, Shane, before I let you go, Chiefs-Eagles down in New Orleans. The Chiefs are 1.5-point favorite. Total is 49. What are your favorite plays in Super Bowl 59? Side total props. What do you like?
In my opinion, Super Bowl markets are obviously very efficient, especially, in the second week. And so, this is to me more of a fun wager than anything else. And to me, I don't know how you don't side with the Chiefs in this situation. I feel like I've seen this story before. And I'd rather go, I think the Chiefs are the right side, but I'd rather go the Mahomes Super Bowl MVP route. He's plus 105 at BetMGM versus I think you're getting an implied probability of like Chiefs 54% versus like 47, 48% of Mahomes MVP. So I think I would rather do that. I don't see a world where the Chiefs win where Mahomes doesn't win the MVP. And I think that I'm not even worried if he gets injured that they have a chance to win this game. So if I was going to have just one single wager on this game, I think it's Mahomes MVP.
Yeah, I think that's a good look. Sometimes it really just is that easy. Shane Jackson joining us here on Send It In. Give him a follow on X at SJacksonMGM. BetMGM writer going to join us every week here on Send It In. Shane, appreciate the time, man. Great talking with you. We'll catch up again next week.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, let's talk about that blockbuster trade that we had over the weekend between the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Lakers. Still crazy, right? Like, still hasn't fully sunk in all the way that Luka's on the Lakers and AD is on the Mavericks. What does this mean, though, from a betting standpoint, right? So looking at the Lakers first, I think what's really interesting about this trade for the Lakers is the division prices. The Lakers are currently leading the Pacific Division. They're up on the Clippers by 1 game. However, they're still plus 120 to win the division. And I think that speaks a lot to odds makers understanding that the Lakers' focus, especially after making this trade with Luka, isn't about the regular season. It's all about the postseason, right? You got a 40-year-old LeBron James who's won 4 NBA championships. He's not worried about the regular season. He doesn't care about what seed he gets. His focus is on the playoffs in April and May and hopefully June. Luka, it's the same kind of thing. He's obviously still trying to work his way back from injury. So I wouldn't bet the Lakers to win the division. The fact that they're 1 game up right now on the Clippers and they're still plus money, it's going to take time for Luka and LeBron to gel. They're also not going to push those guys in the regular season. They're going to do just enough to make the playoffs, make sure they get in, and then they're going to go for it, obviously, and try and win as many titles together as they can. So would not bet the Lakers in their division at all. Then they're plus 800 to win the West, 14-1 to win the finals. Again, the Lakers were 40-1 to win the finals before this trade, and now they're 14-1. Feels like just way too much of a dip for me. Luka's arguably a top 3 player in basketball, maybe even top 2, especially when he's fully healthy. Him and LeBron, though, are kind of similar, and they're both ball-dominant guys that really need the ball in their hands as much as possible, right? So I think that learning curve of them trying to learn together, there is going to be some bumps in the road there. I just think it's too soon to buy in on the Lakers. I certainly want to see how this all looks. They also need to get a center, right? I still think OKC is better than the Lakers. And right now, Jokic is going to be a nightmare matchup for the Lakers because we know the way to beat the Nuggets in the postseason and defend them is with size. And the Lakers don't have any size right now. So you traded away Anthony Davis, who's one of the best defenders in the NBA, who struggles with Jokic to begin with. Now you don't have anybody at all to replace him. I would expect the Lakers to go out and get a big, but man, I think they match up really bad with Denver, and obviously I still think OKC is above the Lakers as well. The way that I would bet LA is I would go under their current win total at 47.5. So right now, the Lakers, they have 35 games left in their season. They need to go 20-15 over those final 35 games to get 48 wins. They have the 8th toughest schedule remaining in the NBA. And as I was just talking about with the division race, the Lakers don't care about the regular season. They're going to do whatever it takes to just make it to the playoffs, and then they'll take their chances with whatever seeding they get. So this Luka trade, immediately when I saw it, I thought under win total on the Lakers for the regular season. I like that bet going under -110 on LA. As for the Dallas Mavericks, where I see value in the Mavs is for them to miss the playoffs at +100. I think this trade could work out well for Dallas, right? Anthony Davis, when he's healthy, is still a top 10 player in the NBA. I think Kyrie and AD are going to be a great tandem. I think that's a great pick and roll combo. And defensively, especially in the interior, I was just talking about ways to beat Denver and Jokic in the postseason, and that's throwing a lot of bodies at him, throwing great defensive big man at him. Well, you got Gafford and Lively and Anthony Davis now. The problem with Dallas is, even though I know that their front office wasn't happy with Luka and he doesn't play any defense, I mean, man, what he gives you offensively, now you have to find new ways to do that. And we've seen what's happened when Kyrie is the primary option on offense. We've seen what that's looked like in Cleveland. What's that look like in Boston? What's that look like in Brooklyn? It's not all that great. Klay Thompson came to Dallas to play with Luka. Kyrie Irving was settling into Dallas because he was playing with Luka. Gafford and Lively were great big men because they were playing with Luka. Now you get rid of him. I think this thing could go south. I think there's a better chance it goes south than it gets better for Dallas. So I think the value is on the Mavs to miss the postseason at +100. I like their under win total 44.5 as well. Dallas currently 26-24. They have 32 games left, so they need to go 19-13 over their final 32 games to go over that win total of 44.5. I would go under -120. I like that quite a bit. And then we also have the De'Aaron Fox trade. I like this trade for the San Antonio Spurs. I think with Dallas potentially declining, certainly the Kings declining with no more De'Aaron Fox, there's a chance that San Antonio could sneak up into that play-in game and make it to the playoffs. So I think there's some good value there on the Spurs at plus 350 to make the postseason. All right, let's talk some big game. Let's talk some props here for Super Bowl 59. Today we're going to look at some of my favorite props for the Kansas City Chiefs. We will start with Patrick Mahomes. Talked about this one last week. I still like it, even though the numbers are starting to change a little bit. So maybe you want to wait, see if you can get a 35.5. But at the plus money, I like taking over 36.5 pass attempts for Pat Mahomes at plus 105. In 4 previous Super Bowls that Mahomes has played in, he's gone over 40 pass attempts in 3 of those 4 games. Andy Reid understands that in the biggest game of the year, you put the ball in the hands of your best player and you let Mahomes create. We saw last week what he was able to do with his legs against Buffalo. Mahomes isn't Lamar Jackson. He's not Jaden Daniels with the ball in his hands. He doesn't have that kind of speed, but he's so good at picking gaps and finding ways to scramble and get those back-breaking first downs or those back-breaking scrambles to get 6, 7, 11 yards. And I expect him to do the same thing in the Super Bowl. So I think Mahomes is going to be running around making plays. I don't think they're going to lean on the run game as much as they have this season. I think Andy Reid and the Chiefs are going to call a lot of pass plays, and they're going to let Mahomes either make the decision to throw it or take off and run. So I like over 36.5 pass attempts for Mahomes at plus 105. I also like Mahomes' longest completion under 35.5 yards. Now, they do have 2 fast receivers in Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown. We really haven't seen explosive plays from the Chiefs, though, this season, right? Like, there's no Mahomes to Tyreek Hill 70-yard bombs every single game. It's just not the way that they play anymore. And the Eagles' secondary is so good, and it's really tough to hit them for big shots. Really, the only way we lose this bet is if there's a busted coverage or a defender slips, they fall down, whatever it may be. But I don't think we're going to get hit with Mahomes to Xavier Worthy or Hollywood Brown 40 yards down the field. So I like under 35.5 yards, longest completion for Pat Mahomes. I also like Samaje Perine over 1.5 receptions at plus 170, the Kansas City running back. So Isaiah Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, we know those are the 2 main backs. More so Hunt here has emerged in the postseason. But Perine is in on 3rd downs. And because of how great the Eagles secondary is on the outside, it might be tough for Mahomes to hit some of his options on the outside. He might have to throw the ball down to either his tight ends in the flat or to his running backs and Perine. So I like over 1.5 receptions for Perine at plus 170. I think there's good value on that. He's had 11 games this season with 2 or more receptions. And look, if the Eagles start fast and the Chiefs have to play catch up a little bit, they're going to be more inclined to throw, and Perine's going to get more snaps than probably a lot thought he might going into the game. I just think that's great value. Over 1.5 receptions at plus 170 for Samaje Perine. Long shot touchdown score, kind of a middle long shot that I like. DeAndre Hopkins at 5-1, plus 500. Anytime touchdown. Since being acquired by Kansas City, Hopkins has 4 touchdowns with the Chiefs. He has not scored a touchdown since December 8th against the Chargers. Juju Smith-Schuster is starting to get more and more snaps in place of DeAndre Hopkins, but when the Chiefs are in the red zone, when they're in goal-to-go situations, Hopkins is going to be out there. And I think at plus 500, I think that's the value. Again, these Eagles corners are good. So when you get down to the 5-yard line and there's going to be so much focus on Kelsey, Mahomes is going to have to give his guys a chance. I think he's going to be looking towards Hopkins, and I just like that price at plus 500. So I would look at D-Hop anytime touchdown. And finally, I agree with Shane on Super Bowl MVP. I would look at Pat Mahomes plus 105. I think he's the value. If the Chiefs win, it's going to be hard for anybody but Mahomes to win Super Bowl MVP, especially if they're making history. They're going to be the first team to three-peat. I think he's going to be the one that wins MVP, so I would look at him at plus 105. If it's not Mahomes, I actually think the value is on a Kansas City defender, whether that's Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, whoever you want to look at. I would more so go Karlaftis at 100-1. I think either Mahomes, Karlaftis, 2 guys I would look at for the Chiefs to win Super Bowl MVP. All right, let's talk some college hoops now. We go off the glass here on Send It In, presented by BetMGM here on the BetMGM network. Looking at our top 10 teams in college hoops. What a day we had on Saturday. Just crazy upsets all over the board. Houston going down, Iowa State going down, Marquette going down, Florida going down. bunch of big-time upsets. The team that did not go down, though, was the Duke Blue Devils, who are still our number one team in college basketball right now. Duke is plus 450, only 2 losses for the Blue Devils this season, and according to Ken Pom right now, they're 5th in offense and they're 3rd in defense. They're the only team in college basketball that's top 5 in both offense and defense. Folks, Cooper Flagg is as good as advertised. You know, there are these freshmen that come around every once in a while that impact the game on both ends of the floor and do just about everything. I think he's the closest freshman we've seen since Anthony Davis in terms of, like, he doesn't play like a freshman, and he's just, it's ridiculous how good he is and how much he impacts the game. He's given me Anthony Davis freshman vibes at Kentucky. Cooper Flagg, the best player in the sport, and Duke, the best team in the country as of now. Blue Devils, my number one team. Auburn right behind them. I mean, the resume that the Tigers have is silly. They're the number one overall seed if the NCAA tournament started today. Their only loss is to Duke in Cameron Indoor Stadium. We know how good the SEC is. The SEC might get 13 teams into the tournament this year. Auburn hasn't lost a single game yet in SEC play. They're the real deal. Janai Broom's back, playing at a good level. And what I love about Auburn is that they have a great offense, but they also have a really good defense. So they can win games in the 80s or the 90s, but they can also win games in the 50s like we saw last week against Tennessee. Duke and Auburn, it's been those two teams for quite some time, and it's still those two teams for me. Number 3 is where it changes. I'm going to go Alabama at number 3. They're 13-1 to win the national title. Bama is 2nd in offense right now. They play at the fastest tempo in college basketball. Problem with the Tide is that they rank 43rd in defense, according to Ken Pom. Now, I think their defensive numbers are a little bit skewed because they play at the fastest tempo in college basketball. That means more possessions for the opposing team that they play against. They're starting to get a little bit better on that side of the ball. I think what's scary, though, about Alabama is that they really haven't shot the three-pointer all that well. They played the toughest schedule in college basketball, and yet here they are at 18-3. Another really impressive resume for Bama. You know, this was the team that made the Final Four last year. They brought just about every starter back from that team that made it to the Final Four. And they're starting to get hot at the right time. 2 weeks from now, we get Auburn at Alabama. It's going to be one heck of a game. Florida, for me, is going to be number 4. They're 16-1 to win the national title. I understand Tennessee beat Florida on Saturday without Zakai Ziegler, but that was such a good spot for Tennessee. They were coming off a home loss to Kentucky. Florida had blown them out in Gainesville to start SEC play. That was just a good get-back game for Tennessee. So I really don't look too much into it for Florida. I still like their team a lot. They're 6th in offense, according to Ken Pom, and 10th in defense. Love their guard play. Love their big men. They're going to be a tough out in the tournament. So Florida, for me, is my number 4. I'll go Houston at number 5. The Cougars are plus 900 to win the national championship. 8th in offense and 2nd in defense. It just feels like the same old Houston, right? It feels like the same Houston we've been seeing for the last 3 or 4 years, where this team is so elite defensively, but are they going to do enough on the offensive side to win a national championship? And Texas Tech upsetting them on Saturday kind of reaffirms every concern that you would have about Houston. Picking them to win the national title or placing a future on them is, if Houston plays a game in the 80s, can they win that game, right? They beat Kansas last week on a miracle. They were down 6 with 8 seconds to play, and they found a way to send that game to OT. But that game was in the 80s. They should have lost that one. They played Texas Tech in the 80s, and they lose that game. There's going to be a game or two in the tournament where Houston's going to have to win in the 80s, and I just don't think they're going to be able to do it. So that's why I'm out on Houston. Iowa State, they're my number 6 team. They're 15-1 to win the national championship. Kind of feels like Iowa State peaked a little bit too early this season. They need to get Momcilovic back. He's their stretch 3, stretch 4 who can really shoot it, because right now they're struggling to hit shots from the outside. They're relying a little bit too much on Curtis Jones to give them enough offensive firepower. I like the veteran makeup of Iowa State. I like their defense. I love their head coach, TJ Otzelberger. It just feels like Iowa State might have peaked a bit too early. Now, we've seen plenty of teams in college basketball start the year hot, get into conference play, go through a little bit of a rut, and then head into March and find that gear again. Iowa State certainly could be that team, and maybe now is the time to buy in on Iowa State because you're getting a good price on them. Just something missing for me with this Cyclones team, so I would stay away. Tennessee is going to be my number 7 team at 16-1. Much like Houston, I have the same concerns with Tennessee. They're the number 1 defense according to Ken Pom, but they are 37th in offense. It's just the same Rick Barnes team, right? great on defense. Are they going to give you enough offense in the tournament? I don't think this Tennessee team on offense is as good as some of the other Rick Barnes teams, while the defense is pretty much what we see every year. So I'm out on Tennessee as well. Texas Tech, my number 8 team, at 40-1. First time having the Red Raiders in the top 10. Probably the most impressive win of the weekend. Texas Tech had their head coach and their best player ejected in the first 4 minutes of the game at Houston, and they still found a way to win that game in overtime. Just an incredible win for Texas Tech. Graham McCaslin's a really good coach. JT Toppin, who's their best player that got ejected, is really good. And the Red Raiders, when they're hitting their three-pointers, folks, they can beat any team in college basketball. Texas Tech, my number 8 team. St. John's, I'll put at number 9. The Johnnies are 40-1 to win the national title. Look, when Rick Pitino's your head coach, you always got to like your chances in March, right? St. John's is number 4 team according to Ken Palm on defense. Problem is they're 72nd in offense. When Pitino's your head coach and you got a defense that good, you always got a chance, especially in March. But St. John's is going to have to hit some shots. They're going to need to be a better three-point shooting team if they want to make a Final Four run or win a national championship, and that's why their odds are still at 40-1. And then finally, it was tough for me to find my number 10 team, but I'll go with Illinois at 35-1 to win the national championship. Illinois is still missing their big man, and that's a big piece. Yakuchunas is still one of the best point guards in college basketball. Illinois just feels like that team that they're either going to get upset in the first round or they're going to go all the way to the Final Four. There's so much variance with this Illini team. They play at a top 10 pace in college basketball. Their offense is very good, especially when they're in a rhythm and they're knocking down shots. But man, they can get beat by anybody on any given day, especially by a good mid-major team. So I'll put the Illini at 10. They're 35-1 to win the national championship. I just think there's way too much variance with the Illini to place a future on them to win the Natty. So that is my top 10 in college basketball. Duke, Auburn, and Bama, I think right now pretty easy, clear-cut, 1, 2, 3, however you want to order them. Florida, Houston, Iowa State, 4, 5, and 6 for me. Tennessee, Texas Tech, St. John's, and Illinois is going to be my 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, let's wrap up the show here with PJ's plays on Send It In right here on the BetMGM Network. A reminder, go to X, follow us on at the BetMGM Network, Twitch at the BetMGM Network, go to YouTube at the BetMGM Network as well. Our prop block of the day is going to be Samaje Perine over 1.5 receptions at plus 170 against the Eagles. Talked about this a little earlier. Eagles secondary is awesome on the outside. It's going to be tough for Mahomes consistently to find receivers down the field. I think he's going to have to check things down to his tight ends in the flat, over the middle of the field, and to his running backs as well. Perine's had 2 or more receptions in 11 games this season. I love the fact that we're getting plus 170. Lock in Perine as my prop lock of the day. Dog of the day is going to be in the game of the night in college basketball, Iowa State and Kansas. Here's a stat for you. Kansas on Big Monday in college basketball is 37-0. They've never lost at home on Big Monday at Allen Fieldhouse. Well, that streak might be coming to an end tonight. This spread's a little funky. It feels like Kansas should be 4.5, 5, yet it's only 2.5. That tells me that there's a lot of smart money on the Cyclones. I'll take Iowa State plus 2.5. And then finally, my best bet is going to be North Texas plus 2.5 against UAB. Again, North Texas should probably be like a small favorite in this game. At the very most, it should be a pick'em. I think we're giving UAB way too much credit here, making them a 2.5-point favorite. Andy Kennedy's a very good coach. UAB only lost to North Texas on the road by 3 earlier on in the year, but I think North Texas on the road, it's going to be a get-back game. I'd look at some money line too, but North Texas best bet of the day, plus 2.5 against UAB. Once again, Samaje Perine over 1.5 receptions, going to be my prop block. Dog of the day, Iowa State plus 2.5 against Kansas, and North Texas plus 2.5 against UAB is going to be my best bet. Thanks again to Shane Jackson for joining us. Make sure you guys stay tuned for You Better You Bet live from New Orleans at Radio Row coming up 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you tomorrow.